Most restaurant operators have a pretty good idea what it's going to cost them to open up a restaurant. But Westchester County can be a little bit different. Now, even if you've done a budget, spoken to a broker, saw a few spaces, maybe even took a contractor through those spaces to get an idea of what you're looking at, you still might be wrong. And I don't mean by a little bit, I mean by tens of thousands of dollars. And the thing is, these are the types of costs that don't typically go on a pro forma and they're not in your lease. My name is Kyle Inserra. I spent 15 years in the restaurant business and was a part of two different restaurant concepts here in Westchester County before I became a commercial real estate broker. So I have been on every side of this transaction. I've signed my own leases, I've helped tenants sign leases, and I've helped landlords bring restaurant tenants into their property. Now, I want to be clear, I've made plenty of mistakes, but now I feel like I'm in a unique position. And my goal is really simple, is to help my clients avoid making the same mistakes that I did and some of the mistakes that I have seen other clients make and other tenants in the market make. So I hope you find this helpful because today we're going to walk through 5 of the hidden costs of opening up a restaurant here in Westchester County. And again, these are not typically things you're going to budget for. These are not things on your pro forma, and they're definitely not going to show up in your lease. So stay with me because I'm about to save you a bunch of time, a whole bunch of stress, and a lot of money. All right, here's the thing about West County that most people don't understand until they really start looking. Now, it's not Manhattan, it's not Brooklyn, but you're going to start to look at the rents and you're going to realize that it's pretty comparable to some parts of those markets. And I can tell you why. It's because landlords know who they have, meaning they know the demographic, right? They know who's going to be your clientele. They know their market overall in terms of what's coming, what's going, and they know where rents are, where they've been, and where they're going. So they're pricing accordingly. Now, here's what I want you to understand before we get into the 5 costs. The hidden costs are not in the rent, right? You're going to get the rent numbers, the triple net numbers right up front. Okay. So there's no hidden costs there. That's not what we're talking about here. They are in everything that happens from the day you sign the lease until the day you open up the doors. And right now, as we sit here, April 17th, 2026, Westchester County, we are in the middle of one of the biggest development waves that this area has seen in decades. Thousands of new residential units, billions of dollars of investments, bunch of new transit connections. And that's good news. I mean, that's the type of stuff you look for. That type of growth, that type of investment, that's attractive to restaurant operators. More people, more demand, more guests, right? That's the idea. But it also means that the regulatory environment is changing in real time. And if you don't know what is changing or what potentially could change, it could really blow up your build out budget. All right. The first one is grease trap compliance. Now, I know what you're saying. You're saying, Kyle, I own a restaurant. I know I need a grease trap. This is not a hidden cost. Well, I hear you. But when you're looking at a space here in Westchester County, one of the first questions you need to ask is very simple. Does it have a grease trap? Obviously. Does that grease trap meet the current code requirements? That's the big part. Okay. Because most operators don't know that the requirements are not the same town to town. New Rochelle has different thresholds from Yonkers. Yonkers has different thresholds from White Plains. Each municipality is different. And let's just say some of them are less forgiving than others. So that means if you're looking at a space that does not have a grease trap, you're going to want to make sure you do your homework and find out exactly what those requirements are for that municipality. And the grease trap that goes in there, before you invest the money, make sure it's exactly up to code for the type of restaurant that you have. I mean, a new grease trap, depending on what you're looking at, could cost anywhere from $3,000 to $40,000. That's a huge chunk of your build out budget before you even start buying any other piece of equipment and something that you probably didn't budget for. So make sure you know what your requirements are based on the type of restaurant you are. What I mean by that is if you're a fried chicken concept versus a smoothie shop, you have 2 different grease trap requirements and different depending on where you're going to be opening up your store. Now, unfortunately, some of you may have already signed a lease or started negotiating on a property, but this is something that your broker should catch prior to. But really, truly, at the end of the day, even as I say that, it's not your broker's responsibility to know the grease trap requirements for the municipality. That's on you. Their job is to show you the best real estate in the market. And if they happen to know the grease trap requirements, great. Have them show it to you in writing, send it to you via email so that you know and you have something to refer back to, just in case the town comes to you and asks where you got this information, you have something to back yourself up. But to be clear, don't blame the broker. That's on you. All right. Number two. Now, you might also say, this is not something that is a surprise to you, but hear me out. Venting and hood requirements, Westchester County. If the prior tenant in the space was not a full service restaurant with a full service kitchen, you might be starting, and most likely are starting, with zero ventilation. Now, in a single story building, easy, right? You're going to punch right through the roof, put your connections up there, put the mushroom cap up there, and it's relatively simple. But in a multi-story building, right? In a lot of these new mixed-use developments that you're seeing in Yonkers and New Rochelle, you may need to run that ventilation through 7, 8 floors. That is an expense you do not want to take on unknowingly. That is something that's going to cost you anywhere between $120, $150 per linear foot. If you're looking at a property and you're still negotiating, see what the landlord's willing to do in regards to that expense. Now, keep in mind, whatever you ask the landlord to do, if they're willing to do, meaning contribute towards the build-out, that's going to be leveraged off your rent, which is a completely different video. And again, that conversation needs to happen early, and it certainly can happen after you sign the lease. All right, the third cost you want to be aware of is the liquor license. Now, in New York State, the average, what I'm hearing these days, is about 4 to 6 months to get your liquor license. But in Westchester County, it's a little bit longer. Not sure why. Maybe some of you guys know why you've experienced some of these delays. I know that there are certain attorneys that you can use that work more regularly with the SLA. They work with an expediter maybe that can get this done sooner. But I wouldn't bet on that. Okay, I wouldn't plan on that. I would plan on taking the 4 to 6 months. So make sure that you have all your ducks in a row and you're dealing with an attorney who knows what's going on, and that you're as efficient as possible in that process, because the last thing you want to do is open up without any revenue center, particularly the bar, not being open. Forget about the revenue for a second. From the optics perspective, it just doesn't look good. It doesn't feel great to open that way when people are looking at an empty bar or looking at a bar where you can't serve the alcohol. And by the way, I'm sure a lot of you guys don't budget for that in your build out. First 6 months, no alcohol sales. So that's something also to keep in mind. But aside from that, which again, maybe another thing you're saying, oh, well, we know about the liquor license stuff. The piece that's changing right now is that if you want to serve alcohol in an outdoor area, you need the SLA to get or to approve that area to be licensed for your liquor license. The kicker is you need the approval from the town that sidewalk cafe or whatever it is you're going to have for outdoor seating is approved by the town first. So you actually have 2 different approvals that you have to figure out, and the timing on those, can be inconsistent or unknown, really. So if that's part of your vision, having outdoor dining with a liquor license, get started on it right now. And I say now, but a lot of you guys is already probably too late for this year. So hopefully you did the right thing. But if you're building out a restaurant, you're looking towards next year, as soon as possible. The fourth cost we're going to talk about here is something that's sort of, again, 2 parts, but it's town-specific permitting and the SEQRA, called the wild card in this SEQRA thing. Now, I've worked in markets all across the country, and I've seen some building departments take 30 days, and I've seen other building departments make you grind it out for 4 to 6 months. There's no universal permitting timeline for Westchester. You need to know what's going on in the specific town. So in saying that, just a little side note here, make sure that you're doing all you can to work with an architect and a designer and a contractor who are familiar with the town, and the town is familiar with them. That's a big, big deal. People like to work with people that they know and they have a track record with. So you understand what I'm saying here. I know a lot of you guys also know that, but if you're coming from out of town, do your best to make sure you're making those connections. Now, in that permitting process that we're talking about here, aside from all the regular stuff that sort of hangs that up, there's a new issue in 2026 that most people are not really talking about. Even if you Google it, you're not going to find too, but it's out there. New York State has this law called the SEQRA. It's the State Environmental Quality Review Act. It basically says that there are going to be this new set of laws that are going to govern how development projects get reviewed before they move forward. So what does that mean to you? Well, the spaces coming online in Westchester right now are being developed in, like I said, a very transitional regulatory environment. And the governor's administration is pushing through these SEQRA reforms through Albany, and it's called the Let Them Build agenda. So really, this is for anybody looking at signing a lease in a new development. You need to ask one question and you need to get a straight answer. So if your broker doesn't know, make sure they're putting you in touch with somebody who can give you the answer, or you talk directly to the person who can answer this on behalf of the developer. You're going to ask them, has this project already cleared SEQRA, or is it still in the queue? That's all you have to ask. That answer is going to change your timeline. And your delivery timeline, meaning the keys and when you can start your construction, that changes everything. So this is a big deal for those of you who are looking at these new developments. All right. And now the fifth cost, I'll call the warm shell myth. Now, aside from a second gen location, which are in high demand, this one's my favorite because it sounds so reasonable. It just sounds like you call in a space, the listing says restaurant ready, warm shell, and you're like, great, previous tenant was a restaurant, should be easy. Not necessarily. All right. In Westchester mixed use developments, restaurant ready often means the building has an exhaust shaft. So in Westchester County, mixed use. So in Westchester County, in the mixed use developments, a restaurant ready building or restaurant ready property often means that the exhaust is just roughed in. Okay. That shaft is just roughed in, is what they say. And the actual hood system, the makeup air, the grease trap connection, and the fire suppression, that's on you. Okay. So don't assume that restaurant ready means all of that stuff is in place. You need to walk the space, preferably with your contractor or a contractor that you're considering, not just a broker. Again, broker's job is to show you the great real estate. A lot of brokers in this county will tell you exactly what's going on, very knowledgeable. They know the systems, they know the expectations. They've been down this road with this landlord, probably on this property for a little bit. Probably on this property with other prospective tenants. You need somebody who knows what it takes to make a kitchen operational. While we're talking about that, let's talk about two other compliance items quickly, now that I'm thinking about it. First, Westchester County has a food allergy restaurant safety law. You're required to post bilingual signage around the allergens on your menu in English and in Spanish, and you need at least one certified allergen-trained staff member on the floor at all times during service hours. So keep that in mind. It's not optional. It's not a suggestion. It's a county law now. Now, second, this may not seem as big of a deal, but it's the on-request single-use food service law. So that's plastic utensils, straws, condiments, available only when a customer asks. And that signage needs to be in English, Spanish, and Chinese. It's a real thing. So neither of these are necessarily expensive, but if an inspector walks in on day one and you're not in compliance, that will be a very expensive first week of business. So why did I make this video? Well, number one is because I have seen good operators who know Westchester County, who have done build outs, get tripped up by these things. Every single one of them, some variation of them. The grease trap compliance, the SLA, the permitting stuff, the SEQRA, the warm shell myth. Look, they just didn't do their homework. They didn't study hard enough. They didn't pay attention to all the details, and it tripped them up, mainly financially and then timeline-wise, which obviously impacts your finances. But also the other problem is they're working with a broker that doesn't necessarily know that these things exist. And it's very easy because, like I said, there are a lot of great brokers in Westchester County who know this market like the back of their hand, but they're busy, number one, and they're also dealing in other asset classes or just other different types of retail where this type of stuff is just not on their radar. Believe me, it's a lot easier to lease a dry use space than it is a restaurant. So it might just fall off their radar. So again, not their problem, it's your problem, but I want you to be aware of it because like I said, my goal is to make sure everybody's making more informed decisions around their real estate. So when I walk a space, these are the things I'm looking for because I ran a restaurant. You can't take that away. It just does not go away in a lot of different aspects. You can ask my wife. I'm brutal to dine with because I'm looking at every single detail. But when you're talking about things like, where does the hood go? What's the grease trap situation here? I mean, sometimes you can smell a grease trap. It's awful. Obviously thinking about the rent. Most brokers in Westchester County are very good at what they do. They know the markets, they know the landlords, they know the rents, they know all the details about the demographics, the psychographics, what's coming online, what could be made available, what is coming available in the next 18 months or 2 years. But they never stood in the kitchen at 2 o'clock in the morning trying to fix something. But they never stood in the kitchen at 2 o'clock in the morning wondering why the hood's not working. They never had to sub in Saturday night for a dishwasher. And they've never had to really negotiate on their own behalf for a business that they're going to be a part of, that their family relies on the income from. So I think that's a different perspective that I have. I don't lose that reflex when I look at these spaces. I walk into a space and I'm not just thinking about the rent per square foot. I'm wondering, can we move the hood? Do the bathrooms have to be there? I wonder what the landlord here would offer in TI. I'm thinking about these things because Westchester's moving quickly. I just saw today that New Rochelle is getting a bunch of money to help accelerate the development that's already happening there. And then you have Yonkers. It's got $2 billion in active investment going on right now. I say that because the best ground floor retail opportunities in these new development projects are going to go to the ones who know what they're doing, who are the most prepared, and can come present themselves with an understanding of what it takes to open and run a restaurant in Westchester County, period. That's what they're looking for. That's what these landlords want. That's what these developers want. They want names, they want quality, but they want to know that you know what you're getting involved with. So if you're looking at space in Westchester County right now, or you're getting close to pulling a trigger on a deal, send me a DM. I'd be happy to get on a 15-minute call with you. We can look at it together. And I'll tell you everything I know about that project, that property, that market, anything that you need to know that I know, I'll share with you before you commit. No charge, no pitch, just trying to give you the right information at the right time. If you found this useful, please subscribe, because every week I'm going to continue to put out market intel and deal breakdowns for restaurant operators and investors in this market every single week. Follow me over on social media, Instagram, TikTok, LinkedIn, at Kyle Inserra. It will all be in the show notes, and I'll see you guys next week.